Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of The Geo Trip. We are on episode 9, and I am here with my favorite, only co host, Dr. Kyron Prince. And today we're bringing you Kashauna Mason. Kashauna Mason was born and raised in Dominica, the island of Dominica, with the flag with the Cicero on the parrot, just to make sure we're all clear. And she has taught high school for about 2 years before pursuing a bachelor's in geology and physics at the University of Arkansas, Fayetteville, Arkansas. Ooh, pig suey. From there, she went to Texas A&M University, where she's currently a PhD candidate in geology. For balance, she reads, goes to karaoke, or just hangs out with friends. Kashauna, welcome to the Geo Trip.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited. Kyron has been going on and on about your research. So, Kyron, I think it's only fair that I let you kick us off today, huh?
Hi, everyone, and hi, and welcome to Kashauna. So, Kashauna, tell us a bit about yourself.
So I'm from Dominica, and to me, that's like pretty much a dominant part of my identity. And it's sort of formed me in the way that I am, in my interests in geoscience and in people and in nature. And for fun, I believe in balance. I believe in balance. So there's a lot of things I do for fun, including like karaoke, reading, Netflix, playing tennis. Um, and I just like enjoying life. And so I just want to do research that I enjoy. So it feels less like work and more like fun.
So, Dominica is known as the nature island, right? How would you say that influenced your decision to become a geoscientist?
It was pretty influential as a child growing up from like primary school to high school. We would always have a lot of trips that were part of our classes to go outdoors, to visit the ocean and count waves to figure out if they're constructive and destructive. And so all these little exercises that we did and these little trips, this opportunity to not be in class, not be in uniform, was always something that was very exciting. And although I did all the other sciences, I had to cross out being a doctor because I realized I'd probably kill somebody. I had to cross out chemistry because for some reason I just didn't enjoy it as much. And so at the end of it, I ended up with geology and physics based on all the things I'd done in Dominica. And then I did do an associate's also in like geography and physics. And and the more I went, the more I realized, okay, geography, geology, geoscience is the field that I'm enjoying. And it didn't matter what aspect of geoscience that I was studying. The information to me was just so interesting. And I got to not only learn the information, but to go out and actually see the things I was learning. And for me, that was pretty cool.
Totally. Geography is like the ultimate gateway for getting into geology, it seems.
It
It
is.
really is, but I also want to make it very clear to our audience that geography and geology are definitely two different things, both very commendable on their own. But yeah, because it's sometimes like a little misconception we have in the Caribbean, right? When I tell
Yeah.
people I'm a geologist, they're like, "Oh, so you're a geographer? What?" And I'm like, "No, no, 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 no." So just to make sure we distinguish between them.
At the time when I did geography, it was definitely more of geology than being a geography a major when I think back on it. Like now that I'm in the US, I can distinctly tell the difference between the different types of geosciences. It sort of more of was a geography degree, a geology degree than a geography. So
Agreed, 100%. Because I remember for CXC learning about geological processes and volcanoes and other things that clearly define geology in my geography class. So, yeah, exactly like Karen said, definitely a natural stepping stone coming from the Caribbean. So I guess speaking of stepping stones, what made you move from Dominica to the US, more specifically Arkansas?
So as a child, I guess I always was like, I want to be called Dr. Mason. And because I couldn't become an actual, like a medical doctor, the only way to do that was to get my PhD. And so, in looking for schools, for the most part, I looked at like UWI, which is like the University of West Indies. I remember sending them an email and no one responded to me. So I moved on to I moved on to US schools, and that was when I was teaching in Dominica. And at first, it was kind of like overwhelming because I would look at a school, start applying, and then in the list where you're like, what country are you from? Dominica would never be on the list. And I would email them and they'd be like, oh, I don't know what to, they wouldn't know what to do about it. And there were like a few schools that had Dominica on the list. And one of those was University of Arkansas. There's also a guy, I think Byron. He's a Dominican and he came to Dominica and like talked about the University of Arkansas. And so my dad heard about it, sent me the flyer, and I also had a friend who also just transferred to University of Arkansas, another Dominican, who was like, "Oh, you're looking for schools? Why don't you come here?" And so, in true Caribbean fashion, you go where you know people. And so I, that's how I found the University of Arkansas, just through other Dominicans.
Oh my goodness, what a small world. So you're actually talking about Dr. Byron Winston, who, special mention to him, he was the first person that introduced me to the National Association of Black Geoscientists in 2018 when I went to the University of Arkansas. And so Dr. Winston, Byron, a good friend, you've just reminded me I should call him, is such a pillar in the geoscience community, especially in regards to that building the bridge between the Caribbean to US connection and helping you to get comfortable in spaces. So I just wanted to take a second to shout him out. Sorry for the segue, guys. But one of the things we talk about a lot on the GeoTrip is community. So had to make a special mention of him.
Yeah, of course. I think if it wasn't for him, like a lot of us who went to University of Arkansas, because there's a couple Dominicans that went there. I don't think we would have went there if he didn't come and talk about it. And I'm glad he left a pretty good legacy, because when I got there and I said I was from Dominica, people always had like good things to say. So that's always great.
Big up to man like Byron.
For real. You know what? We need to contact him and have him on the Geo Trip because he has a great Geo story. But just getting back to Kashauna's Geo story, because I cannot wait to share with our audience your research. So we figured out how you got into geology, how you managed to migrate, or why you decided to migrate. So let's talk about, what did you do, your undergraduate research?
So in undergrad, I feel like research accidentally fell into my lap. It was just a point in my life where it was maybe my second or third semester, and I was really broke and I needed a job. So I think I just emailed every single person. And the people in the Geo office responded, Lisa and Joanne, and they're like such super cool people. And they responded to me and they're like, oh, this professor, John Shaw, is looking for a student to work with him. And so I emailed Dr. Shaw, he responded, and we had a conversation. And at the time, I was a geophysics major with the idea that, I wanted to go into geothermal energy. However, Arkansas wasn't necessarily the place for that specifically. And he was like, well, I don't do geophysics, I do physical sedimentology. And I don't know if he understood at that time, it doesn't matter what he was doing, I wanted to do it, especially since he was paying me. So not only was I getting to do research in geoscience, but I was also getting paid to do it. So that was super helpful for me. And he's also credit to me being where I am now as well. So with him, when I worked with him, I did research on the potential avulsion between the Mississippi and Atchafalaya River. And so for years, probably around 1 or 2 years, I sat down and I digitized super old maps from the US Army Corps. And he would always be like, well, if this work is getting boring, just let me know. And I'm like, don't think I can say that something that's paying me is boring. I wasn't at that point in my life where I'd be like, oh, this is boring. I'm not gonna do it. I don't. And you know what? And I wasn't bored. I don't think as a person I really get bored that easily. And it was something where I could, be listening to music while I was doing it. So I could be doing other things while doing the work. So I definitely wasn't bored and was super appreciative of the opportunity. Before I left, I think it's a paper right now. He's the first author, and as his undergrad, and the amount of work I put in, I was able to be second author. So that was like super cool and a great opportunity for me. And I got to present at conferences as an undergrad, which isn't super common for undergrads. He supported me through those conferences, so it was great.
Thank you for sharing that. I mean, I just want to interrupt Kyron a minute before you answer that question and just plug the Fayetteville family, because this is like a reunion for me hearing you speak. I'm getting chills. And just a reminder how important community is and how different community can look, but can support you and really get you through undergrad. I mean, women like Lisa Milligan and Joanne Kavami, they are such amazing, I mean, amazing women. Aside from the work that they do in the office as administrative staff, they also actually do field work and encourage your scientific growth and conversations and really do help advise you. So thank you so much for sharing that. And special shout out to Dr. Shaw, because man, he's also helped me by giving me some research for money.
That raises a really important point about how unpaid internships make playing field so unlevel for people who don't necessarily have the ability to support themselves over the summer doing unpaid research, or, well, I guess unpaid internships hopefully aren't a thing in our field anymore, but just the opportunity to earn an income, get involved in research, and look at how much good opportunities arose from that. So if you can bring in an undergrad student and pay them, it makes a world of difference. Undergrad research is like my pet passion project, and it made a difference for me, and it's good to hear that it had such an impact on your academic career as well, Kashauna.
It did.
And even one thing I think we sometimes forget to talk about, how undergrad research prepares you for your master's and your PhD, because now you actually know how to research. And I remember struggling with that because I never did undergrad research. So getting into my master's, if it wasn't for people like Dr. Shaw, people like Dr. Bambrahana, Byron Winston, Dr. Winston, Dr. Stephanie Shepard, they who were also grad students while I was at University of Arkansas. If it wasn't for them like taking me on to do the field work with them, I would have never learned it. So Kashauna, thank you for highlighting such an impactful part of the journey and such a really important point that we forget about. And also offer paid research to grad students and postdocs too. That stipend is not enough.
Yeah, we need it.
Desperately. So, would you say there was a natural evolution from the research that you did as an undergrad to the research that you're doing now? And can you tell us a bit about your current research?
So in some ways, yes. So right now I do planetary geology, and I mean, if you ask me in undergrad if I would ever do planetary science, I'd be like, oh, that sounds cool, but I don't think that's something I could ever do. Like, how would I even get to do it? So Dr. Shaw, I mean, we had multiple conversations on, okay, if you're looking for grad schools and you're looking for advisors, this is what you need to do. This is what you need to ask. You need to ask, this is who you need to talk to. So he gave me pretty good advice. And he also recommended people for me that he knew were looking for grad students. And so at AGU, I think, what year was it? 2018, somewhere around there. When I attended AGU, I had a lot of interviews with potential advisors. So I got to like talk to them and ask them questions. They got to ask me questions. I got to learn about their research. And my present advisor, Dr. Ryan Ewing, his research was definitely like, when he sent me the proposal of his grant and his research, I was like, oh, that sounds so good. And although it was in Texas, because another opportunity I had was in Canada, and I'm like, it would be nice to leave the US. I was like, this internship, this opportunity with him, with this specific research is like too good to pass up. And he also reminded me in some ways of like Dr. Shaw, and he was recommended to me by Dr. Shaw. So I was like, I like Dr. Shaw's vibe, so that means this person must be really good to work with. And before I got to A&M, before I had to accept, I got to visit the campus. So I got to like talk to other students. I got to talk to people working with him, talk to students that just took his classes. And all around, it was like 10 out of 10. So I already knew, okay, this was a good person to work with. This research was excellent. So I have to do it. Plus, Texas is hot. And you know what? I like the heat. So that's how I got to Texas A&M. And so my research uses Iceland as a Mars analog. And so I'm part of a huge team called SANDY, which stands for Semi-Autonomous Navigation for Detrital Environments. And we use autonomous techniques to play out scenarios that are very similar to the scenarios that NASA does to the rovers that they have in space. And so we have different types of geologists. So we have people that do spectroscopy, we have geochemists, we have volcanologists, and then we also work with a group of engineers who like control our rovers, who have some of the autonomous gadgets. So they have a program that can categorize pictures. So it could be like, oh, this part of the picture, these are rocks, sand, gravel, etc. And so we use a lot of different techniques to sort of decide where we want the rover to travel and decide what targets we want to pick out. And my role as in Sandy was, well, one, I'm more of a physical sedimentologist. And so I'm looking at how size and shapes of sediments in fluvial and aeolian systems change. So that's what I do specifically for Sandy. But also as part of our operations, I help organize scheduling in terms of who's working what position on what day, meal planning, who's cooking today, who's not cooking today, and like other different logistics. So I also dealt with this and sort of being the person that knows where everything is, and if you need this, oh, this is where you can find that. Yes, we have this. So I dealt with that during our season. We had 2 seasons, one in 2019 and 2021, because 2020 was pretty COVID centric. And so that's sort of what I do for planetary science. And Iceland is very similar to what Mars looked like, quite a few years ago, a couple millions of years ago. And so the things I study, like fluvial and aeolian systems, we can look at where Perseverance is landing right now. And it's landing on this fluvial deltaic system, which is overlain by aeolian sediments. And so if I can understand, maybe possibly distinguish between particles, use particle shape and size and distinguish what processes form them. That's sort of one of the things I'm trying to do. Use that knowledge and apply it to Martian sediment. So if we understand the basaltic nature of sediments and processes and weathering in Iceland, it will help us understand what's happening on Mars.
Pretty cool. Yeah. Man, my research pales in comparison to that.
I mean, pretty exciting. I thought I had a beautiful research area out in New Mexico, but I think you beat me back. So we at the Geo Trip, we really pride ourselves of following the AGU's initiative of plain language. So for our listeners who may not necessarily have a geology-related background or be geology adjacent, do you mind if we explain or ask you to explain some of the terminology that you used?
Sure.
So let's just say deltaic fluvial. What's a deltaic fluvial environment?
So it's just an environment formed where it's both a delta and delta formed by a fluvial system. So as a river approaches it slows down and sediments start to deposit, it creates a sort of fan-like feature. So the one river channel starts to branch out in many smaller channels, and that sort of forms a delta. I think that's a fluvial delta system.
It always
So
puts us on the spot when we have to go back to basics, right? We're
Yeah,
like, wait,
it's
I know this.
yeah, it's like I know what it is, but now I need to say it. Yeah.
so like the Mississippi Delta
Yeah, so
fits
that's
the bill. Yeah.
yes, the Birdfoot Mississippi Delta because it looks like a birdfoot. Yeah. So it's sort of like a fan-like feature.
And we also find those on Mars.
Yeah, so that's if you look at one of like pictures of where Perseverance, the which is the present rover on Mars now, has landed, that's the feature it's landed on.
Why has Mars been like the focus of so much exploration lately? What makes Mars that worth exploring?
Well, for one, we haven't been there, and as human beings, we're very curious, right? And if we can understand a planet like Mars that had liquid water, but that's no longer there, maybe we can know what is stored for us here on Earth. So if we can understand the history of Mars, what made it like it is now, perhaps we can sort of envision what Earth might look like really far ahead in the future and sort of slow down whatever it is that might cause us to become a life, supposedly maybe lifeless planet like Mars. Um, though one of the prime objectives for going to Mars or even sending rovers on Mars is to search for life, and that life wouldn't look like what life looks like necessarily on Earth. Like animals and people walking on streets or in like forests and trees, but maybe we can find them in like the really small, I guess, microcellular organisms. Maybe we can find life there, and just maybe preparing just human exploration. So the more you explore, the more you learn about, and that's just what I guess we as scientists do and want, just to learn and explore and find the answers to questions we don't know. So there's still so much we don't know about our universe. So let's go to Mars.
I love how you gave that little caveat just now about, yeah, lifeless potentially. Because, yeah, we really don't know. There's a lot of unknowns and uncertainty. And that's what makes science and geoscience so great, right? Trying to unravel the uncertainty. So I'm just going to pull it back a second for our listeners and for myself, because I love learning something new. So you said you are essentially using Iceland as an analog for Mars.
Hmm.
So, would you care to tell us why y'all chose Iceland?
Okay, well, I will say I was brought onto the project after the place was chosen. But if a lot of analog missions for Mars is set in Iceland because of how the island is set up. It has volcanoes, it has glaciers, both of which Mars has. Um, we can study we can study in a way that's similar to Mars because Iceland, because of all the eruptions, there's areas where there's not a lot of trees and a lot of grass, so it doesn't get in the way of our analysis. So in that way, it's very similar. We have features like you have the same fluvial system, so you have dunes, ripples, all of which you can find on Mars. So if you want to find an area with almost everything in one, there's places in Iceland you can go to for that. The
Because
main point too is Mars is made up of basaltic sediments, and so is Iceland.
exactly, that's what I was getting you to drive
Yes.
home. I wanted to share that fun fact with the audience and the fact that there's also all this ice cover. So no, you took us where I was trying to make you go.
Okay, great. I was like, oh yeah, that's the most important part.
I knew you were getting there. I know it's summer, so you're kind of relaxed as you get ready to go back to school. But I just wanted to bring that point out for the audience to understand why Mars is such an amazing analog. Sorry, why Iceland is such an amazing analog for Mars. And actually, vice versa, because we are looking at Mars, we are trying to think of our different planetary bodies and understand them so we could understand how things have changed here on Earth. Because when we think of geology, we think about these large expanses of time before even we were alive or before it was actually formally documented. So it's really interesting making these linkages or showing um, how things have evolved or can evolve. So that kind of brings me to this may be a little bit of a trick question. So you can tell me you have absolutely no idea, or you could share your thoughts. But what do you think are some of the cautionary tales that we can learn from planetary research or that you may have personally learned? And if there are none, that's okay too.
Personal opinion. So as of now, don't know if there's life on any other universe, and we don't know if there ever was. And that itself, to me, is the cautionary tale. So if are we the only planetary body that there's life, and if we are we working so that we can keep that up for infinity amount of years? I mean, the answer to that right now is no. But but to me, that's the cautionary tale. So what if what happened to all those other planets is happens to us in that same way? Yeah, so I feel like other planets, watching them and not being able to find life in the same way that we find it on Earth, and it is in itself a cautionary tale.
Wow. I mean, I don't know about you, Karen, but I'm like mind blown right now. Just I'm like sitting here Googling the red planet, watching imagery from
Yeah.
the rover, actually. That's what I'm Googling.
This conversation is making me remember one of my favorite books, The Martian. Please tell me you've read it.
So,
Is that Martian Green?
No, it's a novel by Andy Weir, The Martian. They made a movie out of it. Matt Damon, astronaut, gets stranded on Mars. It's worth a watch. Come on, people.
Okay, I haven't seen the movie.
It is so good.
It didn't get a lot of good tomatoes or rotten tomatoes or whatever review. It didn't get.
No, it was good. It was good. Listen, I have not led any of our listeners wrong. My picks are immaculate. Okay.
Hashtag personal opinion.
I will put it on my list. I'll watch the movie.
I was going to say I have not read the book, but I did watch the movie at a bad geology movie night, if that counts. But Kashauna, I mean, thank you. This has been so great, so informative. We can go on for several more hours, but we will take you off the chopping block, and I will kind of close us off by saying that we here at the GeoTrip, we also believe in balance. Remember, you talked about balance at the beginning of our discussion. So aside from sharing technical, we also like to share a little bit of personal insight with our guests. So welcome to the hot potato segment. Are you ready for a hot potato?
I'm ready. I'm kind of hungry, so it came just
So, hot potato segment. I mean, we can do it rapid fire, or Kyra and I could take turns. Which one would you prefer?
I don't even have any expectation of what's gonna happen. So let's do rapid fire. It'll either, blow up or not. Let's see.
Well, I will rapid fire our hot potato and then let Kyron close us off. How about that?
Okay.
Perfect. So, Aggie or Razorback?
Razorback.
Codfish and bakes or Sandcoach?
Codfish and bakes.
Carnival or World Creole Music Festival?
Carnival.
Under the counter or nanny?
Under the counter.
And what's the last thing that you watched?
Hunter x Hunter.
Ooh.
It's an anime.
Well, that was all I had for you. See, no sweat, right?
Not bad, not bad.
Well done,
the
well
World
done.
Festival and the Carnival, that was a hard one though. But the list of artists for this year's Real Creole Festival came out, so I'll choose Carnival.
Yeah, I saw the list and I said, you know what? I'm okay with waiting another year before I attend.
Exactly.
That's
However,
cool. That's cool.
I thought honestly, Under the Counter versus 90 would have been the harder, but hey.
You never know.
You know what? I just want to say personally, thank you, Kyron. Close us off because this has been another really informative, really educational, fun-filled episode, and I love the fact that you are looking at something so unconventional.
So thank you so much again, Kashauna, for being our guest today. and for literally expanding our podcast beyond our planet and out into the outer reaches of our universe. So, this is your opportunity to any advice that you would like to give to someone who's maybe thinking about pursuing a career in the geosciences.
My advice, and that's something I did for myself, is, say yes to even the opportunities that might make you feel uncomfortable or that you're not used to. And maybe you'll find something that you love. So that's sort of how I found my way here.
Beautiful. And for any Aggies that are listening, my regrets.
You were outnumbered, and I will say woo pig sui. Final word.
To my alma mater, keep your heads up and gig 'em.
Gig 'em. I was even wondering what the slogan was.
Wow.
Gig 'em. And who pig sui?
I think we need to just say woo pig sui and end.
Yeah.
I need to have a talk with Ryan.
He's a Razorback. Technically, he grew up in Arkansas, so
I am really outnumbered then.
Let it go. When you edit us, just close out on the woo pig sui. It's okay.
Yeah.
We won't judge you.
And to our listeners, remember you can find us on Twitter. Be sure to interact with us there. Is there any social media that you'd like to share with our guests where they can follow you and your research, Kashauna?
You can follow me on Twitter at Mason Kashauna, spelled as is.
Okay, and we'll see you all for the next episode. Who knows where we'll go next, but wherever we do, we're going to have a good time with it. All right, y'all. Take care.
Take care.
Thank you. Take care.